Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is pouring a drink. Maybe it's a beer after work. Maybe it's wine at dinner. Maybe it's something much stronger. Alcohol is so normal that most people never stop to think about it. It's in celebrations, holidays, weddings, sporting events, and entire industries worth billions of dollars. But alcohol is also strange when you think about it. It's a poison. Not a very strong one in small amounts, but a poison nonetheless. It makes you dizzy. It slows your reaction time. It clouds your judgment. And yet, human beings have spent thousands of years figuring out better and better ways to make it. So that raises a question. When did ancient humans start drinking alcohol in the first place? Who looked at a piece of fruit that had gone bad, took a sip of the strange liquid dripping from it, and decided this was something worth doing again? Because the story of alcohol doesn't begin with breweries or vineyards. It begins long before cities existed, long before farming, and possibly before our species was even fully human. To understand where alcohol came from, we need to go back millions of years, not thousands, millions. Imagine a forest in Africa. No villages, no tools, no fire, just trees, animals, and the distant ancestors of modern humans moving through the branches looking for food. One of the easiest foods to find was fruit. Fruit is packed with sugar, and sugar means energy. The sweeter the fruit, the more valuable it was. But fruit doesn't stay fresh forever. When fruit falls to the ground and sits there for a while, something begins to happen. Tiny organisms called yeast land on it. They start feeding on the sugars inside the fruit, and as they do, they produce something else: alcohol. This process is called fermentation, and it happens naturally all over the world. You don't need humans to create it. Nature does it on its own. That means ancient primates were probably encountering alcohol long before they understood what it was. They would find overripe fruit on the forest floor, eat it, and unknowingly consume small amounts of alcohol. In fact, some scientists believe this happened so often that our ancestors evolved to process alcohol more efficiently than many other animals. Around 10 million years ago, a genetic mutation appeared in one branch of the primate family tree. This mutation improved the body's ability to break down alcohol. Researchers think this may have helped early human ancestors safely consume fermented fruit that would have made other animals sick. In other words, our relationship with alcohol may be older than the human species itself. But eating naturally fermented fruit is not the same thing as deliberately making alcohol. For that, humans needed something else. They needed to settle down. For most of human history, people lived as hunter-gatherers. They moved constantly, following animals and seasonal food sources. Their lives were focused on survival. Finding enough to eat today mattered far more than experimenting with what might happen if fruit juice sat in a container for a week. Then, everything changed. Around 12,000 years ago, in several parts of the world, humans began farming. Instead of wandering across the landscape, they stayed in one place. They planted crops, they stored food, they built permanent settlements. And suddenly, they had something they never had before: surplus, extra grain, extra fruit, extra honey. And wherever humans had extra sugar and extra time, fermentation wasn't far behind. One of the oldest pieces of evidence for human-made alcohol comes from China. Archaeologists discovered chemical traces inside pottery jars dating back roughly 9,000 years. The residue revealed a fascinating mixture of rice, honey, and fruit that had been fermented into an alcoholic drink. 9,000 years ago. That's older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than almost every civilization most people learn about in school. Somebody mixed those ingredients together, sealed them inside a container, waited for nature to do its work, and eventually drank the result. And they must have liked it, because alcohol starts appearing almost everywhere humans settle. In the Middle East, ancient people fermented barley and wheat into beer. In the Caucasus region, grapes were transformed into wine. In Africa, people brewed alcohol from sorghum and millet. In Central and South America, different cultures fermented corn, agave, and fruits into their own unique drinks. Human beings kept discovering the same process over and over again. Take something sweet. Let yeast eat the sugar. Wait. Drink. The remarkable thing is that many ancient societies didn't view alcohol as a luxury. In some places, it became a basic part of daily life. Ancient Egyptian workers drank beer regularly, not because they were trying to get drunk all day, but because beer provided calories and was often safer to drink than contaminated water. Large state-run breweries produced enormous quantities of it. Some workers were even paid partly in beer. Imagine that for a moment. You're helping build one of the greatest monuments in human history, and part of your paycheck arrives in the form of fermented grain. But alcohol wasn't just about nutrition. It became social. Human beings are group animals. We gather around campfires, dinner tables, and celebrations. Alcohol fit naturally into these gatherings. It lowered inhibitions, encouraged conversation, and helped reinforce social bonds. A wedding feast felt more festive with alcohol. A successful harvest felt more worthy of celebration. Religious ceremonies felt more meaningful. Across thousands of years and thousands of miles, alcohol became woven into the fabric of human culture. Of course, ancient people also discovered something else. Too much alcohol causes problems. This realization came surprisingly early. Ancient writings from Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, China, and Rome all contain warnings about excessive drinking. Human beings didn't need modern science to notice that getting extremely drunk could lead to poor decisions, injuries, fights, and regret. They may not have understood the chemistry, but they understood the consequences. And yet, despite those consequences, alcohol remained. Why? Because the benefits, at least from the perspective of ancient societies, often outweighed the costs. It preserved calories. It made certain liquids safer to consume. It played a role in rituals and religion. It strengthened social connections. And perhaps most importantly, it provided a temporary escape from the hardships of life. Ancient life was difficult. People faced disease, hunger, violence, harsh weather, and uncertainty on a scale most of us will never experience. A substance that could briefly reduce stress or create feelings of pleasure had obvious appeal. But here's the truly surprising part. Alcohol didn't spread because one civilization taught everyone else how to make it. It spread because fermentation is almost impossible to avoid once people begin storing food. Leave fruit juice in a container long enough, and it ferments. Leave grain mash sitting in the right conditions, and it ferments. Leave honey mixed with water, and it ferments. Again and again, different groups discovered the same process independently. Nature kept showing humans the trick. Humans kept repeating it. And eventually, they mastered it. Over time, brewing became more sophisticated. Winemakers selected better grapes. Brewers refined recipes. Distillation was invented, allowing people to create drinks far stronger than anything nature produced on its own. The alcohol content increased. The variety increased. The industries increased. What started with naturally fermented fruit on a forest floor eventually became one of the largest industries on Earth. And when you step back and look at the entire story, something interesting comes into focus. Alcohol was never really invented. It was discovered. The yeast was already there. The fermentation was already happening. The chemistry existed long before humans arrived. What changed was that humans learned how to guide the process, improve it, and make it part of their culture. So, when did ancient humans start drinking alcohol? In one sense, the answer may be millions of years ago, when our primate ancestors first ate naturally fermented fruit. In another sense, it was around 9,000 years ago, when people deliberately began producing alcoholic drinks using crops, honey, and stored ingredients. Either way, alcohol has been part of the human story for an astonishingly long time. Long before written history, long before cities, long before kings, empires, or nations. Somewhere in a forest, beneath a tree full of overripe fruit, one of our distant ancestors took a bite, tasted something strange, and unknowingly started a relationship that would last for millions of years.